edition of the African Brics Hidden Potential. My name is Dr. Kenny Adebayo, also known as Mama K, and my co-presenter for today is none other than Daniella Djan. She is the CEO and founder of Peculiar Prodigy. And in today's program, we have the amazing, dynamic Elize. She is a sustainable business development specialist based in Cape Town. Elize, welcome to Africa Brics. How are you today?
Thank you, wonderful. I'm very excited to just dive into the discussion. And
I know, so let's go right into it.
Great. Sustainability,
what does that mean? What do you do in terms of your sustainability, being a sustainability business development specialist?
So my journey started about 15 years ago. I studied at the Sustainability Institute at Stellenbosch and under Professor Mark Swilling. I'm not sure if everybody knows him, but he's the head of the Development Bank of South Africa, the chairman. And I just really wanted to make a difference in the world, to see. My mother is a social worker and my father is a farmer. And I think the social interest in working with people and poverty alleviation and the environmental side just came together in a sustainability lens. And I think what a lot of people forget is there's two things in life we can't escape, and that's death and taxes.
But you said the death first, maybe taxes.
Maybe taxes first. But there's a third thing, is our planet. Our planet has got finite resources. Our water, our energy, our food. Some researchers predict there's even only 60 harvests left on this planet. So we forget that this planet we're custodians of the planet. To look after our wildlife, our water and our air. And sustainability is basically a lens of looking at the world to see how we can build back better, greener, and how do we include youth and women and marginalized groups in this journey for preservation of our natural resources, but also our people's well-being.
So do you think in Africa we're making that a priority, at the moment when we think about, because some people, when I work in the township, a lot of there's still food security, there's a lot of issues.
Yes.
So to them, planet is like, what are you talking about? I can't even get food to eat. How important is it, and how should we make it a priority in Africa?
Yeah, in the African context, I think it's so important because it affects us. Climate adaptation, climate mitigation measures, we've neglected a lot of the adaptation, and unfortunately the poorest of the poor communities, marginalized communities, will be hit hardest by climate change, because of no resilience against the infrastructure, the housing we live in, our roads, where our food sources are. If we've just looked at the floods in KZN last year, it was a national, provincial disaster. We were not prepared for the wrath of climate, for flooding coming. We see more increasing wildfires. We've had a couple of droughts already. And in the context of poverty in Africa, we're not investing as much in green technologies that would create more adaptation and resilience so that we as a species can survive. And in Africa, our communities, we've always been in a good place where we are harvesting beautiful fossil fuels for all the North countries, our food, our fruit, our minerals. Even if you're looking at sustainability and you're looking at the new drive towards electric vehicles from the EU and the EU Green Deal, it's important. A lot of the minerals are coming from Africa and they need that for the technology. So if we as South Africans and Africans are not starting to think about how we can take advantage of becoming more resilient against climate change, how we are looking at where our water is coming from, our energy sources, and our food particularly, and then waste. Let's not forget about waste. The opportunity of waste to energy and green technologies that can make us more resilient, and look at Wakanda. Wakanda forever. That's what we want to build. And we're sitting with the minerals, the rich minerals in our continent. It doesn't need to leave the shore. You know, how do we benefit as Africans from these opportunities and build green businesses and green technology?
Wow. So for you, in terms of the journey 15 years ago, starting at Stellenbosch, how has it been? Has it been really tough trying to convince, you know, the government, even the people, the youth, you know, people you work with? How has the journey been, you know, for you? And what services as well do you offer?
Yeah, I think it's really a great question, and to reflect on that journey, you don't always sit still and do that enough. But I think for me in 2005, 2006, when I started my journey as a consultant in that area, I had to go knock on Engine's door and say, Engine, do you have a head of sustainability I can talk to? You know, what is your sustainability strategy? What are you doing in terms of your carbon footprint? And they said to me, let's talk to the HR manager. There's a health and safety manager. I said, no, I'm talking about sustainability. And at that point, again, Europe and America, and even Australia, very common to have a department for sustainability and someone on the board seat. And with ESG investment, you know, there was a big drive. But in Africa, you know, it's becoming mainstream really in the year after COVID. So there's a very big focus also on investors, climate investment. And European, I've had a conversation with the head of climate finance at the EU in Brussels, Caroline Vellemans. And she's saying with the EU Green Deal, only 8% of their investors are meeting their targets for climate finance because they cannot find the projects in Africa. Big ticket green projects.
Really?
So I had that meeting with her 2 weeks ago, a 2-hour consultation session, and she's looking for precinct level, off the grid, renewable energy technologies, waste management solutions, water management solutions. If we're looking at our country, for example, the amount of water security and lack of water infrastructure and water pollution, on top of our energy crisis, there's a huge amount of investment required because our municipalities are bankrupt and there isn't enough finance after COVID to actually meet the needs from a budget perspective. So private investment is really, really important, and it's mainstream. So I see sustainability becoming mainstream, and maybe coming back to our discussion about what you can't escape. There's this line in the sand that you cannot cross, and that's a 2050 net zero line. And our country in South Africa has made commitments towards the NDC, 1.5 degrees Celsius target reduction by 2050 on a policy level. And we all know we've got beautiful policies in South Africa. I've done an analysis of all the green policies. There's a beautiful tracker that anybody that's interested can have a look, greeneconomytracker.org. But we've measured a number of countries in Africa also benchmarking how we're doing in policy, beautiful policies, but from an implementation perspective, and we've also done at the organization I worked at TIPS, the Trade Industrial Policy Strategies, we've done that analysis. We call it the Green Economy Bulletin. So investors can also go and have a look at it, because you want intelligence, you want to see the country you're entering, and that bulletin gives you the reality on the ground. Very important to look at these commitments to drive climate finance from policy, but also then what is lacking as gaps of project implementation. So 2 really strategic documents I've worked with in the last 2 years to paint a picture of where that investment gap is sitting.
Right, sure. Okay. So it's fascinating what you're doing. What, Elize, has been your greatest achievement, or what are you most proud of?
Sure, I think for me it's just, I'm feeling very aligned with my purpose. You know, I've always followed my heart, but as a woman in the sector, I think seeing more nurturing energy, even in terms of nurturing the planet and our resources and communities and people and equality. So I'm feeling I'm at the age of 40 in a point of my life where I'm involved in very catalytic multi-million year projects that can shift, really shift and include marginalized groups. For me, that's very important. So a sense of peace and belonging, that I'm meeting the right people, even at the conference coming up, just creating more visibility on green industries and technologies and where there is opportunity in Africa to invest in.
Sure. And having said that, what or who has been your greatest influence in your professional life especially?
Yeah, I believe Professor Mark Swilling. If you want to have a look at him, he's been very influential. When he built the Sustainability Institute, he recruited us as students very strategically, so we have students from across Africa, bright-minded students who went through the same philosophy or lens of building sustainable infrastructure.
Wow.
And these students or alumni are in government departments, they're in position-making, decision-making, managing big budgets, infrastructure projects, private sector.
Sure.
So for me, Mark Swilling has done an incredible job, and he's my hero in sustainability. But then also I'm very fortunate to work for Galo Monsinclair. He's a French senior economist at the Trade Industrial Policy Strategies. And it's working with bright minds that really have great data and research, because that's what we need at the end of the day, is also to publish, in our EV sector, the hydrogen sector, the information in value chains and master plans that we're shaping and investing in. For me, that's quite important. So those two people are true role models for me.
Wow.
And then the entrepreneurs I work with, I can never leave them out. I'm so inspired. I work with a lot of youth and women entrepreneurs with very limited capital, setting up green businesses and following their journeys over the last 2 to 3 years, just to see and get a phone call saying, I landed an investment, my production is going to scale, or I'm entering a new market, is so fulfilling.
Exciting, eh?
Yes.
Sure. You're a mom, you're a wife, you're a businesswoman, you're head of your game. How do you keep work-life balance?
Very important. On Tuesdays, I have a board meeting, and that is my surfboard in Luxembourg. It's my board meeting.
I love that.
Yes, so that's all. It's called Initiative Moms on Board. So we all swim as far as we can into the ocean, and we forget about our phones and our laptops.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Oh.
And I love my own garden. So I grow. I've got a food forest in the deep south, which is the challenging southeaster. I come from a farm, so I love my own vegetables, and always trying to just put seeds back into the soil really grounds me. I just feel, and I'm most of the time barefoot if I'm not on the surfboard. But being in the mountains, staying close to nature, and a simple life where I still feel very connected with the community. We've got a wetland in Glencane, and we're conserving the wetland. We understand the importance of the wetland, infiltrating water and bird life species. So being involved in the community and recycling projects, and for me it's just important, and spending time with my family. So I believe in the Khoi San philosophy. The Khoi San actually only worked and hunted for 3 days. Out of the 7 was for food. The rest was in cultural enrichment. They were using hot saunas, painting, and dancing, and I do believe if you truly align to sustainability, to keep that work-life balance and be part of your community and give back and be involved in building society, especially after our long isolation period in COVID, is very important, and it revitalizes your soul.
It energizes you, hey?
Yes.
Well, I think that's all we've got time for this break, but we'll show some of your work and we'll be right back.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Welcome back to the 6th edition of Africa Brics Hidden Potential, and we're still with the lovely Elize. Wow, what a powerful first segment we had today, and I just wanted to go on and on. I was dying to get in when she was talking about recycling, and everything else. As an entrepreneur and a female entrepreneur in a field, that you are, which is unique and unusual. I know you've grown your business, up till now. What are the steps, you would recommend for a female entrepreneur to take their business to the next level?
Correct. One of my big passions, I did some work for the Future Female Business School, just as some context, and there we've worked with about 300 women in South Africa, but also a green tech program in Kenya and Nigeria, and Indonesia and Brazil. And so I work with a lot of other women as well. We always try to kind of see what sector you're in, how you position yourself, and then obviously women have challenges when it comes to family life sometimes and responsibilities. But I think for me, what is important is to stay focused. And for women it's about the hours you put in the day. Unfortunately, for most people, your 10,000 hours becoming an expert or driving on your client base. What you do is to stay focused and not give up on that dream. Now we need to face reality as well sometimes, but it is a gig economy that we're all living in at the moment. Most people are running gigs. I'm running a number of gigs with really great projects and people that I like to work with. And I'm fortunate to be able to choose my clients. But for other women, I think it's important to look at multiple income streams sometimes, and for some of the businesses, if you're starting a recycled business, for example, in COVID, we had a challenge even with our feedstock for used cooking oil, because of a lot of the fast food companies were in lockdown, standing still. So a lot of those women had to pivot. They couldn't produce biodiesel anymore because the...
I need to talk to you about that. Cooking all day.
No, that's a hot topic. It's a hot topic, definitely. But I think what is important is to understand also the connections between different sectors.
Right.
So if you're looking at, for example, a woman in a business in the green economy, a big chocolate cake with 8 slices, transportation, waste, water, energy, you can take a bite out of the green economy, but you also need to understand, if I'm a farmer now in agri, I'm doing an urban farm here in Cape Town, and I have load shedding challenges, but I also have water challenges. How do I bring green technologies in and collaborate with other women? So in our cohorts of the Future Female Business School, we created a family of women, a tribe.
Great.
It's truly a tribe.
Wonderful.
Where we lean on each other. There's a specialist, an engineer, there's a water specialist, there's a permaculture. If we're in indigenous plants, and someone is doing cosmetics and have a recipe from their grandmother, it's about sharing and really tapping into the indigenous knowledge also that sits in the generations of our families. And it takes a village to raise a child, but I believe for a woman entrepreneur, it takes a village to raise a woman entrepreneur.
Sure.
Stay connected to your other female members and your community and feed off each other's client bases and ideas and products and services. To be all alone out there is really tough. So that would be my biggest advice, is surround yourself by like-minded people.
And I like the way you're talking about collaboration, which nowadays I say collaboration is the new competition. And if you don't, network, share ideas, tap into other people, and this year or this month, internationally, I know we do the International Women's Day in August in South Africa, but I'm sure you've been involved in some International Women's Day.
Last week was Women Natural Interview.
So we're talking about innovation, about digital. So like you said, I might be a baking cake, but how do I tap, into other resources that other women have? So how do you promote your business? Let me go into that and finish off my question.
Yeah, I think my business is not a hard sell, So from a visibility perspective, I have a website, www.thegreeneconomyacademy.com, but it's a platform where gender inclusion and youth inclusion projects are featured, and it's a sustainability hub where we just, everything that's published that's relevant to especially small businesses in Africa who wants to start up in different sectors. We share resources, and then very importantly, access to capital, access to finance. So there's also a resource from Green Cape. They've got a database on access to finance.
Right.
So for me, being at conferences, being involved in conversations and collaborating, like you say, what I also really love about projects that's coming to me, is catalytic. It's long term. It's not today and tomorrow and I'm out of your life or your pictures. For me, I like to walk the journey with a client for a couple of years to truly see the impact and the transformation taking place.
That's beautiful.
Elise, what are some of the most important things you've learned in the span 15 years that you've been working in this industry?
I think maybe if we say there's a few life lessons and then also maybe a few golden nuggets from an academic perspective or like a professional perspective. So if we come to the life lessons, I really, really believe, be surrounded by the right people. I know business is all about who you know and who you meet, but if your values are not aligned, and you don't have fun along the way with the right people, then you can just turn old and grey and be a very unhappy person. But I think it's really important, the leaning into your gut, trusting your gut, and really following the people where I love people giving back and making an impact and have big, hairy, audacious goals. We call it BHAGs in the Future Female Business School. But something that scares you, something that gives you goosebumps, something that's beyond you, is really important to, and that keeps you going. That's that thing that keeps you aligned to a dream, if you want to call it a dream. And then I think from a professional perspective, what I really learned is take a step back and have a mountain view. If you are down and on a flat surface and you get involved in many projects, sometimes to take time out to have the strategic view on the world. So if we're talking about sustainability and our planetary boundaries and the impact of climate change on people, especially in Africa's livelihoods and businesses, and all the European Green Deal and the American Green Deal, the trade forces that's aligned with that, our whole global planet moving towards a more sustainable place, for me, I've understood the value of policy. Influencing policy and working with national key decision makers to shift and buy into a dream. So at the moment, I'm also working with the Department of Small Business Development. And
basically.
Yeah.
No, I still follow the Khoisan methodology.
I need to follow that. I don't know about you, Daniella.
I need more tips on that.
The more you relax, the more energy you have, and your mind, is healthier. So what I'm helping with them is to develop a 2050 framework for net zero. Net zero is what I was talking about, the line in the land. So our planetary boundary. So every country in the world, and Africa committed to zero carbon emissions by 2050, which is not a long, far way. We will all still be alive by then. But in order to meet these really big goals, to reduce our planet by 1.5 degrees Celsius, takes investment. It takes catalytical, huge projects that needs to go off the grid, decentralized technology, bringing services to townships and informal areas, tackling our waste problem, not just the plastic waste in the ocean, but waste around our communities, creating energy from the waste. It is decarbonizing value chains. So I've done a study on the textiles value chain for South Africa, but where we shifted, we developed a framework, a roadmap for the entire sector to decarbonize by 2050 with very practical implementation steps. And the trade unions will always come and engage with us as stakeholders and say they're scared because there's going to be job losses. No, it's not just that. To make sure that supporting local cotton in South Africa, and cotton manufacturing, cotton growers, our farmers, that, and bamboo and hemp and all the natural products is stimulating our economy, not just shipping everything off to China. Bringing back home what can drive and stimulate our economy. So for me, it's important to navigate towards those little shifts that can help decarbonize, but also create green investment opportunities and green jobs.
Awesome.
Wow.
Beautiful.
Elize, you're one of the speakers for the AIC, the upcoming AIC Global and Trade Investment Mission, and we're very excited to have you on board. What are you excited about? What are you looking forward to for this conference?
I'm really looking forward to understand the investment appetite a bit better. Obviously, I think there's more visibility needed around the technology, the skills, the opportunities in South Africa also, around Africa in green industries. In hydrogen is really big, and hot and electrical vehicles, and I mean there's a lot that's going to be driving new industries. But even if we're looking at the cannabis master plan in South Africa and for cannabis farmers and food infusion and products, huge values to be shipped overseas, I would like to understand from the investment appetite, how are they making their investment palatable to the smaller entrepreneurs that still need some startup and tech and early technology innovation finance, who's not the big ticket sizes. How do we advocate for those groups? Because it's not all precinct level big projects, but for a couple of women in South Africa, investing in them, you're investing in the whole country, because their money, their rand value stretches to the school, to the food on the table for the community, and I think investing more in small businesses rather than big businesses, and especially not fossil fuel related, gas, coal related industries, is exciting. And maybe there's investors that can see the business case, they can see the value in long-term carbon tax reductions in their portfolio. That is very attractive. So for me, I'd love to go and have a look and have those conversations and see how do we create more visibility about climate finance.
Wow.
Because there's a lot of climate finance in Europe to be spent in Africa, but they cannot meet the right project owners. So if we're looking again at our concept of a village, and how do we build the investment village in Africa to keep the money in, so that we don't just give it away to the north. That is what I think is really important, and in the way that we invest in businesses that is truly ethical, fair labor conditions, and good environments, that's transparent, and that brings value to the shareholders.
Wow, I could listen all day to you. I
So
can
could I.
listen to you
At the conference.
There's just so much, there.
Thank you.
I don't know, in closer, do you have any final words for entrepreneurs, out there, or anyone that might be coming for the conference?
I think put your best game on, and the investors, throw your green hat into the ring. We want to make the circle bigger. Come and meet and greet and build trusted relationships, and let's see how we can move that money into really meaningful ways that can stimulate our economy and make Africa stronger.
I think that's the goal, even for the conference and everybody, make Africa stronger.
Wakanda, we want Wakanda for
technology. Elize, thank you so much for such an incredibly enlightening conversation today.
Very welcome. Thank you for having me. I'll see you at the conference.
Really can't wait. And there's so much there. We're going to share your social handles, there for people who might want to know more or hear more about the Green Academy online school. So find out more about what you're doing, because it's so much. I can't keep up. I've been like recycling, all these other smaller projects, future of female business. So there's so much out there, that one could get, gain from you. But we can't wait to see.
Thank you. And I hope to see some gender lens investors. There's a very huge movement in gender lens investment in climate change. So please come along and come and meet us.
All right. Well, I think that's all we've got time for today.
Thank you.
Till next time. This is us saying, don't forget, bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye.